It's Friday night. Allie and I are heading in to get some dinner, and thought it would give me an opportunity to tell a little bit of history of Mexico during the Mexican Revolution. It's super interesting to me, so hopefully somebody else finds it interesting as well. In 1910, there was a guy named Porfirio Diaz who had been president of Mexico for 31 years. And during the election, he was up against Francisco Madero, who was very popular in the country. Francisco Madero lost to Diaz, and what was generally, or still is generally regarded as voter fraud. Diaz being elected, even if it was through voter fraud, was actually in the best interest of the United States. So they had no problem with that. The U.S. during this period controlled most of the oil, the railroads, and the land, much of the land and minerals in Mexico during this time. So we had no problems with this, but many Mexicans did. So that kind of kicked off the Mexican Revolution. The next year, in 1911, Diaz was forced to resign. There was an interim president, and eventually they had elections again later that year, and Francisco Madero was elected as president. And he did a lot for the country to really heal them. He ensured that there would be free and fair elections. He set up for freedom of the press. He released a lot of political prisoners, and he abolished the death penalty. In February of 1913, with the backing of the Germans and the Taft administration in the United States, rebels overthrew the government and the presidency of Mexico. There was a guy named Victoriano Huerta, and he was a general under Madero, but he ended up switching sides and was able to become president. To make his presidency quote-unquote legitimate, he forced the president, Madero, and the vice president to resign. The next in line was the Minister of Foreign Affairs. So the Minister of Foreign Affairs was president for about 45 minutes, just enough time to place Huerta in charge of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and then he resigned and Huerta became president. Huerta had Madero and his VP arrested, and then shortly after that they were assassinated. The next U.S. president, Woodrow Wilson, he would not recognize Huerta as the president of Mexico, whereas Taft was all about him becoming president. Wilson definitely was not, and that kind of helped lead to his downfall. So I talked about this in a previous video, but eventually Huerta was forced to resign less than a year and a half after he became president. The Mexican Revolution continued until about 1920, but in 1917, the Constitution that Mexico recognizes today was written in Querétaro. In 1926, there was a constitutional reform that set the standard for future presidents, which said that all presidents could serve a term of 6 years, but were ineligible to be reelected. So between 1911, when Diaz left office, and 1934, when Lázaro Cárdenas became president, there were 15 presidents in that, 23 years. So, but since then, every president since Lázaro in 1934 has served his full 6-year term. And Lázaro Cárdenas was president from 1934 to 1940. There's actually a neighborhood here in Zihuatanejo that's called Lázaro Cárdenas. It's on the other side of the pier where our friends live. And there's actually a city about an hour from here that's also called Lázaro Cárdenas. And in Lázaro Cárdenas, the city, the the largest seaport in Mexico is located there. So that's a little bit of the history of the Mexican Revolution, and now it's time to get a drink. Hola.